folks. Welcome. We are here at the Stadium Journey podcast, and it is April the 2nd, and we are recording online today with Chris Tuck, who is joining us from the UK. We have a little bit different scenario today because lining up our times where we can get everybody online at the same time is a little bit different with about a 5-hour time difference, but it's great to have Chris with us. So welcome, Chris, to the Stadium Journey podcast.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
So can you start by giving our readers or listeners a little bit of a background of what your kind of experience is? Chris, for those who don't know, Chris is running currently our Stadium Journey Europe Twitter account, and that's where most of our European kind of content is coming from these days.
Sure, yeah. First of all, I'm a sports fan, I guess. Always have been from when my dad took me to my first matches when I was very young. So that's where I've come from. I just love my my soccer and my speedway and my cricket. And I didn't really realise that I was kind of ticking these things off until more recently when I started counting the grounds I'd been to. And I love travel. I love going to new places. I support my own team, and I watch them sort of home and away. And hooking up with Stadium Journey was brilliant because I could just tell my wife that I was working as I went off to Bruges for a couple of days for a few beers with my son.
So where's home for you, and who is the home team?
Yeah, same answer to both. It's Southampton.
Okay, so what Southampton, that immediately brings us into the EPL, or that's probably not the real name for it right now. It's probably something else, but I will apologize up front. My knowledge of European football and European sports is pretty limited, so I'm going to try my best to ask the questions for all of the naive people out there, which I would definitely be leading the pack for.
Don't worry, my knowledge of American sports is pretty bad.
So Southampton, would that be top division
Yes,
English soccer right now?
Yes, that's right. Most of my supported them for 30 plus years, and most of that time top division, top flight, Premier League as it's called these days, Division 1 in the old money. And we had a nice little kind of 7-year sojourn down into the Championship and then down to League 1. Went into administration even as well, and then kind of climbed back up to the Premier League where they are now. And interestingly, you speak to many fans, and that time going down to the smaller divisions was actually a great time. Got to go to some different grounds, a bit more authentic football experience than you get in the Premier League, which has become a little bit sanitised, a little bit middle class maybe, gentrified, I think they call it. So yeah, playing in some of those smaller grounds, we had some fun.
So what would it be like to hit the Southampton to hit Southampton soccer, and what would that experience entail?
Yeah, so moved in 2001 to a new stadium. So if you'd have come pre-2001, we had a really compact stadium. It was quite jagged edges because the road went in a funny direction either end of the goals. Players really close to the fans within a couple of yards. I remember having a conversation with David Beckham when he leant on the side of the pitch once because they were that close, and you could really kind of feel the atmosphere. And the new stadium, like many of the new stadiums in the UK, can be seen as a little bit soulless at times. Like I say, a different sort of fan can come to the games. But more recently at Southampton anyway, there's been a bit of a renaissance of the old school supporters, all getting together in the same area and trying to sing and to chant and to get back to that kind of more, the terraces, as it were. That was a big change as well. We went from terraces to all-seater, and that made a real difference to the atmosphere. But yeah, there's good tribalism in our sport, so we're right next to the away fans. No love lost between the two as you chant back and forth. Southampton's home form hasn't been brilliant, so you've got to just have a sing-song and just make the fun as you can.
So one of the things that I discovered, I don't know, maybe it was the hard way, maybe it was not so much the hard way when I first ventured into Major League Soccer, um, at Toronto FC and various other places, is uh, what was unique for them was the idea of supporter sections, which we didn't really have anywhere else in North American sport. And it was kind of new. The best comparison I could give it to here is like an American college football or college basketball game in a big program where they have student sections and all the students clamor together. Supporter sections have, I think, been a big part of the success of Major League Soccer. What would a supporter group or supporter section look like at Southampton or at other English soccer sites?
Yeah, so you would only be able to buy a ticket in the first instance in the end of the team you support. So this is open to abuse and is abused, but in theory, it should only be Southampton fans in the Southampton area. And we mentioned Liverpool before we went on air. So if we're playing Liverpool, then the Liverpool end would be fans who have come from or who support Liverpool. Outside, there might be a little bit of fencing just to make sure that fans are kind of kept apart in that first instance as they're arriving in. Once in the stadium, you can't get to other parts of the stadium. So the away fans will be partitioned once they're looking into the arena, but also out the back in the concourse area. They couldn't get to where the Southampton fans were. So it's only really outside in the town centres on the way into the games where fans mingle. And to be honest, it's not like the old days here. Most of the time it's good natured. Most of the sort of trouble you can get is after the game when those fans do sort of end up brushing against each other. Obviously one team have won, presumably one team have lost. So that's where you can get a few comments and the odd skirmish. But yeah,
Both teams
nothing.
fans have had a few too many pints.
Oh yeah, yeah. You'll know. I mean, you guys have your beers as well, don't you? But particularly in England, yeah, we just can't do it. We just drink too much and just goes to our heads. And I go and watch games in Germany, and I'm sure they drink as much beer, if not more. But they just want to love each other at the end, whereas English fans just want to do the opposite.
So if we're gonna, let's stick with English soccer for a bit. What kind of experience do you have in the rest of the league? Have you been able to take in a game in each spot in the rest of the league, or are there a few that you're missing, or what kind of EPL experience do you have?
Sure, yeah. So in England, we call it doing the 92, which is the top 4 divisions. Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two. That would normally amount to 92. Unfortunately, Bury FC went bust this season, so that's down to 91 instead of 92 at the moment. That'll get sorted out for next season. And I've done 81 of those
Wow.
91. So yeah, frustratingly close, but no real plans yet to finish them off because I'm at one end of the country and the grounds that I need to do are at the other end of the country. But also, people who do the 92 have this kind of second phase that in an ideal world, you would do all of the 92 with your own club. So for me to see Southampton in all of those 90 other stadiums, but that becomes even more impossible as we've been in the top division for so long. The chances of us playing some of those smaller teams in League Two, you're just waiting for a cup draw is the only opportunity where we might get to play them in a cup competition. So I've done 81 of the 91, and I've done 69 of those with Southampton. So whilst I would love to get to the 91 or 92, I don't think I'll do them all with Southampton. That's probably going to be a step too far.
So does that mean that you've hit all the teams that are currently in the Premier League?
Yes, yeah. The only new one I had to go to this year was Tottenham Hotspur's new stadium. That's made a bit of a splash because it's pretty space age and pretty expensive. And ended up seeing Southampton twice. I took myself up there when we played them in the Premier League, And then 2 months later or something like that, we drew them in the FA Cup, and that was a game I kind of had to go to. So ended up going to the new stadium twice, and that re-ticked off the Premier League for me. Yeah.
So, what would you say? I mean, outside of, and I would hope you would say that Southampton is probably your favorite spot to go. But if you were to step outside of the home pitch, sorry, gotta get the terminology right. If you were to step outside of the home pitch, which stadiums are your favorites in the Premier League?
In the Premier League, let's have a look. See, I always prefer the older grounds to the newer ones. Always a lot more character, a kind of a lot more to see. In the UK, when they started building new stadiums, they used the same company sort of 3, 4, 5 times. So if you look at our stadium in Southampton, very similar to kind of Leicester and Derby County and Middlesbrough. So I prefer the older ones. Everton have got an older style stadium. West Ham did until recently, was a good one, but they've moved to the Olympic Stadium, the London Stadium now. So they've lost all their soul in the process. So yeah, any of the older school ones really, and they're becoming less and less, sadly.
So one of the things that in Toronto here we had our best season was 2017. They were the first MLS team to win what was viewed as the Triple Crown. We won the Supporters Shield, which is for the best regular season. We won the MLS Cup for the league championship, and then we won the Canadian Championship as the best club team in Canada, and then went on from there to go to play in the CONCACAF Champions League. One of the things that I found difficult about that whole process is that the CONCACAF Championship took away from Toronto FC's ability to play at a top level in 2018. And I think it's been a little bit more difficult for North Americans to understand the importance of those champion leagues. So can you tell us how a Champions League in England will be different than like the regular English Premier League season, and how is it viewed as that as an upper echelon, or what's it like?
Yeah, so the champion, it depends who you're asking. If you're talking to the teams who are regularly in the sort of top 6 in England, they're aspiring to the Champions League. Each year they want to get back into the Champions League. It almost became a joke that for Arsenal to come 4th was like winning a trophy, because they stopped winning trophies, but they kept on getting into the Champions League. So they have this sort of, and then they get into the Champions League, so they get the money, which means they can buy the better players and they can get back into the Champions League again. So, you know, that's a great nice little rhythm for those top 6, because it tends to be the same teams. If you speak to the supporters of the 14 other clubs, of which mine is one, then I enjoy watching Champions League games. Nothing wrong in sitting watching Man City go to Real Madrid and get a result, and you know they're good occasions. You can grab a beer and watch the game, but it's almost like another league within a league, because my team are unlikely to get into the Champions League, and so the pinnacle for my team would have been to win the league itself, just the normal Premier League. But because of all the money the top 6 are getting from the Champions League, it means they can dominate domestically as well. So you've got a strange situation in the Premier League now, where you've got your maybe top 6 and then 2 or 3 teams who are always doing a bit better than usual, and the rest are almost playing for 7th or playing for 8th, which is why I said earlier that I preferred when we played in the Championship in League One, because you can challenge for the title, you can win lots of games during the season, and you can have a bit of fun, whereas the also-rans in the Premier League are essentially trying to not get relegated because of all the money that they get from being in the Premier League. So your whole season is A, let's not be relegated, and B, let's see if we can just sneak into the secondary European tournament, which is the Europa League. So it's a little bit, as I say, for the 14, it's not a great situation. Rumours sometimes of a Super League and the bigger teams in the UK going off to play the bigger teams around Europe. If they did that, then I would be fine with that, and the rest of us could have our own league, and we could all try and win it each season.
Yeah, I'm not being a close follower of what happens in the Champions League. It seems like it's always the same teams. Like I could name maybe one team from France, two teams from Spain, four teams from England, but they always seem to be the same teams that are in there, which, in my opinion, has to make the home country leagues less interesting. Like if you really know, like in Spain, it's always between two teams. One of those two teams is going to win, and you're not really a fan of one of those two teams. How is that interesting? I don't know. I guess maybe it's my North American brain can't get the head around
No, I think
my head around that.
I think it's the opposite. I think you're right, and we would look at the draft system that you've got in NFL and say, isn't that brilliant? Why over here couldn't we just have a more level playing field, or even Formula One, where you've got a much more level playing field, and then you can say who's the best driver. Obviously, there's differences in Formula One, but unfortunately, all we're getting over here in Europe at the moment is statistically the teams with more money are winning more games, more trophies, getting entrance into the big tournaments. So if sport is based on the amount of money you've got coming in, that isn't the sport that I fell in love with.
So one of the things that we've heard here about English soccer is that there has been a bit of an influx in American ownership of English Premier teams. I can think of the Glazers. I believe they own a team. I believe the guy who owns the Jacksonville Jaguars owns a team or a part of the team. How is that American ownership being accepted or viewed over there, as opposed to having like homegrown ownership?
Yeah, actually, at Southampton we had Ralph Kruger, your ice hockey man. You know Ralph? He
Sounds familiar.
yeah, he was our CEO at Southampton for a while, so he brought a load of ice hockey good practice into the Premier League. Yeah. So I don't know. Foreign ownership has just become a part and parcel now, and we just have to get on with it. Southampton are currently owned by Chinese owners. A lot of the time, people grade the how well the owners are doing as to how much money they're putting in. So I think the guys at Liverpool, as you say, the Glazers. I think Randy Lerner, Aston Villa. I don't know if he's American. I've got a feeling he is. So nothing particular about Americans, I don't think, but just overseas ownership is basically applauded if they're putting in a load of cash, and if an owner from any other country is not putting in a load of cash, then people hark back to having a local owner. But obviously, often local owners don't put in that money either, kind of thing. So yeah, no sort of. I know the Man United fans are pretty. Or the hardcore Manchester United fans are pretty anti-Glaziers, but I think that's more to do with the deal and the debt, which could have been done by a Chinese person or an English person. So
Right.
not the fact that
Right.
he's American particularly.
Well, I know there's a story floating around about Mike Piazza, who was a catcher for the Mets, who owned a
Hall of Fame.
He bought an Italian team that was 100 years old, and they called it his midlife crisis, because he apparently really didn't know what he was doing, and he essentially bankrupted this Italian soccer league team that had been around 100 years and now is gone. So, Marc, welcome.
A little bit of trouble here in Indiana logging on. Chris, nice to meet you.
And you, boss.
Yeah. Where are you located?
We're in sunny Southampton on the south coast of England.
Okay, Southampton. Yeah, big fan of the EPL, and I guess my question for you, if I were to go visit London and had my choice of stadiums, or anywhere in England, let's say, had my choice of Premier League or EPL Championship venues, which ones would you recommend? Say these are the quintessential. This is what you have to visit.
So Fulham would be your first
Fulham.
place
Yes,
to go to.
that's on my list.
Yeah, that's right on the Thames.
Looks nice.
Some old stands, a little cottage in the corner
That's
where
right.
the players kind of come from, and they're just building a new stand on the Thames side there, but it's still got all the character. Interestingly, we were talking about segregation. They've actually got a neutral area at that ground, and that is so unheard of here that we still talk about it, because that just seems strange. So basically, as an away fan, if you can't get a ticket in your own end, you buy it in the neutral end. So the neutral end just ends up with away fans. Fulham fans are not known for creating, an amazing atmosphere. Often they're people's second club. People support, someone and Fulham maybe, but the stadium there is great. I would have said Brentford number 2, but we're probably going to run out of time because their new stadium is just being finished. And so Griffin Park, where they've been famous for having a pub on every corner of the 4 stands. And so they're next. I've said already that I prefer the older grounds than the new grounds, so that's why I've not mentioned the Emirates or the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Yeah, and I think that's how we are with ballparks. If you were coming to visit the United States and you want to go to a baseball stadium, I'd probably tell you to go to Wrigley Field.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, you wouldn't. just to get that quintessential baseball experience. But Pittsburgh and San Francisco are modern parks that are quite nice as well. I love those old ballparks. But one of these days I'm going to get to London. I'm going to get to England somewhere, and I'm going to go see English Football League match. I don't know when. I hope it's sometime within my lifetime. But Fulham is on my list because I had to update the review on the website, and some of them are older, so you have to do some research. And what I love about English football grounds is that some of these were built in the 19th century, and there's some stands that are still in existence from decades ago, and there's some other ones that are brand new. But most of the stadiums have always been played. Most of the games have always been on the same location. They just build around it. And I love that aspect. It's just the history you still have.
Yeah, that's huge, and that was shown most recently with West Ham's move from Upton Park. They're atmospheric, right in the middle of East London. Keep your head down on your way into the ground and on your way out of the ground. And they moved to the Olympic Stadium in Stratford. All the trappings are there. But it's hideous for a real football fan. West Ham fans don't like it. You've gone from houses backing onto the stadium, the same pre-match routines for, like you say, over 100 years, the same pub, the same cafe on the way in, seeing the same program seller on the corner, through to an out of town almost stadium with a big car park and not much else.
Yeah, that's part of the experience, walking to the game, grabbing a pint before the game, marching with your fellow supporters. We don't really have that here with MLS. It's much better than it was 25 years ago, the atmosphere of soccer. But, to me, EPL is what I follow. That's my league. And, we're just about to put out our lists of the rankings of the best Premier League. We're just trying to update everything to make sure it comes out correctly. I don't want to tick off a bunch of English football fans.
Good luck with that.
I mean, we're already ticked off a bunch of Southern Hockey League fans in the United States.
Don't worry, every time we do a rankings list, somebody gets upset.
But,
they don't count.
They don't count, yeah.
But you're right about those pre-match rituals, and I was actually, for some reason, talking to my kids about this the other day, and it's probably wrong, but I was suggesting that for an NFL match, everyone has a barbecue in the car park before the game. Now, forget I probably got that wrong, but the point is, when they started building new stadiums in England, they often built them out of town, because the city centres didn't have enough room, and so you had to find some space on the edge of town, you know, in that industrial estate, you know, 2 miles out of the city centre. And so, you know, yes, there's lots of parking, and you can get yourself there, but the whole routine of almost coming out of your house, getting a bus into town, having a few beers with your mates, different pubs, that walk to the stadium past all the landmarks that you know and love in your own city, we're realizing now it's being taken away from us, how important that is. Almost goes to the point of why you go to football. Being a Southampton fan, obviously we're generally terrible for 100 and whatever years. You know, I don't really go to watch football. I go to see my mates and have a couple of beers. The football is mildly interesting, and particularly if we win. But you know, I don't mean that. But I mean the whole occasion is about meeting with the lads in the pub at 12, and away you go through to your 3 o'clock kickoff, and that has changed into this, what I call, you know, meet in the car park and grab a hot dog or something, which for us is not right.
Now, one thing when I look at stories about English football leagues, a lot of them talk about their meat pies, which is something we don't have out here. You cannot go to a Colts game or a Giants or Jets game and get a meat pie. Like, how important is the meat pie at a stadium, and are some better than others based on your experience?
Yeah, they're important to many people. I'm not like every time. So take it or leave it. Normally grab something to eat at lunchtime, so not necessarily needing something at that point. So but yeah, it is a kind of quintessential thing in English football, and it's a good thing because it's a great leveler, because some of the best pies are in Rochdale, you know, not necessarily at Anfield. So it doesn't matter how big the club is. You can get some great pies in non-league football, and like I say, teams like Rochdale. So yeah, I think it may even be a slightly more northern than southern thing as well. So down here in the south, maybe we don't quite do the pie thing as much. But yeah, it's probably the most bought thing. There's hot dogs as well, and there's burgers. So pies are probably top of those three. But I'm not saying, you know, 4 in 5 are buying them.
Okay.
So if we continue with talking football, but let's sort of step outside of England for a little bit. Where have you been? Where have your favorite experiences for football outside of England come?
I guess the first one I would sort of recommend is not very far, because it's just across in Northern Ireland. A team called Glentoran in East Belfast. So you guys heard of Belfast. There's a few teams in Belfast, a few good stadiums, but a stadium called the Oval in Belfast is, for those of us who love the characterful stadiums, it's number one almost. It is stunning. 2 old stands. They will give you a tour when you arrive, take you into the trophy room and the supporters club. I think it's the 1922 supporters club. Gives you an idea of the history that's there. And 2 open terraces in an oval shape. In the backdrop, you've got these massive Harland and Wolff cranes that were used on the railways and on the ships. And at the very top, at the back of one end, is a pillbox that was used to shoot down enemy aircraft who came up the river in the Second World War, and there was anti-artillery guns, and that sort of pillbox is still there to see. So yeah, no experience like it in terms of the older style grounds, and that's, like I say, just a short hop across for us across the Irish Sea. Into Europe, I've name checked Germany, because I think English foot fans enjoy going to Germany because it's a throwback to English football 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
You can take your beers on the terrace with you. We can't do that in England. We have to drink up and then, you know, not take our beer. So in Germany, it's great because you can take your beer, albeit you throw it up in the air when there's a goal going in, so you just have to go and get another one. But that's fine. And they're still singing, they're still jumping up and down, and a great atmosphere. So I love going across the German football. Just looking at the list of grounds here. Spain, a good kind of contrast was a trip to Spain with Stadium Journey, actually, where got to go to the Bernabeu Stadium, the Real Madrid obviously one of the biggest and best in Europe. But then on the same day, went to see Rayo Vallecano play at their stadium in the south of Madrid, and complete contrast, but in a really rough and tumble area, a real kind of concrete monolith of a ground. But the place was bouncing, and the experience was, if not as good as the Bernabeu. So yeah, there's a couple there where I've been. France a couple of times recently, and Belgium. Love the Dutch grounds. One called the De Kip, which is a home of Feyenoord. Big Dutch side, and they'll be moving soon. And it really is, the kip means the bowl, so it is a kind of bowl shape, but it's old school. Their fans are old school, so again, we love going across. I've been across there a couple of times. Furthest east I've been from England is Romania. Southampton played Steaua Bucharest in one of our UEFA tournaments a good few years ago, so got to go all the way to Bucharest. We managed to arrive 2 days before kickoff, but still managed to miss kickoff by 10 minutes because we were in a pub the wrong side of town, and by the time we jumped in a taxi and it was pouring with rain and there was traffic, we missed the first 10 minutes. So a bit embarrassing to be so close and still miss the start of it. But that was a cracking stadium as well, home of Steaua. Yeah.
So how many stadiums have you visited?
I'm on 495 currently.
Wow, 495.
Yeah.
That blows away my baseball. It doubles that. I think it doubles my baseball stadium count here in the United States and Canada. Wow, 495. Have you ever crossed the pond into North America to see any matches?
Sadly not. I've been.
Or do you want to?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, nearly got a chance. My daughter's 18th, and we were talking about things to do, and it was on the list, but didn't quite come through. So closest I've been is a wedding in the Caribbean for a week, where I was best man, and there was a bit of cricket going on down the road, but couldn't really get to see any sport at all, unfortunately, apart from on telly. So yeah, that's not been too far west, as it were. Been to a ground in Zambia in Africa.
Oh, wow.
But I don't get to tick that off because we were there. We were thinking of working over there, and our host took us to the stadium, but there wasn't a game going on, so I don't count the stadiums unless I've actually seen a match on there. So but that's probably the furthest south from here.
Oh, wow.
So what kind of things have you seen other than the soccer?
Yeah, I think I guess the other sort of standard English sport is cricket, which we could spend a long time talking about whether it's the craziest thing to play a game for 5 days and still not get a result, or whether I could convince you that it's fantastic. But yeah, there's something for us about. I think if you're a football fan, a soccer fan, and your cricket is your second sport, you can basically go and you don't care who wins. So there's none of that pressure that you feel when you're watching your own team. And the sun is out because it's a summer sport. We're not used to that in our football. And again, there's some good old stadiums in cricket, and Speedway too. Speedway's quite big over here, and again, they don't tend to have any new stadiums. So you've got some quite decrepit old stadiums. Poole Pirates is my closest. They play in the Poole Stadium, and it's falling down, and it's brilliant.
Now, what stadium is that?
I think they just call it the Poole Stadium. Poole is the place. It's near Bournemouth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, just for clarification, when you're talking speedway, you're talking like auto racing?
So these are motorbikes.
Oh, okay, bikes.
They only turn left.
Oh, yeah.
And they got no brakes.
Yeah, we had a race here, Indianapolis, one year with motorbikes, and it did bring out a European crowd. So
and no brakes.
No brakes. Ooh,
that seems insanity.
It's four laps, 4 riders, 2 from each team. The tape goes up. It's a real race to the first bend.
Wow.
3 out of 5 first bends end up in crashes and starting again. Yeah, you just add up your points as you go along. It always, inevitably, the way they've worked it out, it stays close. And there's just something about the smell of those places with the oil and the petrol or whatever it is.
The petrol, wow.
That's
that
I
sounds
don't
exciting.
how does it ever end if they don't have breaks?
They just crash.
Yeah, there's that race to the tape to the checkered flag, and then yeah, I don't know really, because I think they go up to sort of 60 or whatever. But yeah, you don't see them then sort of winding down for another 9 laps. They seem to drag their feet or something.
The
That's
guy jumps off. He jumps off, and he has to stop. He has a. There's
You
like a
only get
bunch of
one
kids.
race. That's it.
One
Yeah.
race. One race.
Yeah, you need to Google it actually. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, that's definitely something to look into for sure.
Okay, it could be coming to Toronto next. You don't know.
Hey, we seem to get everything else, so
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. Well-
What would be on Chris? What would be on your bucket list? I mean, you were talking about doing the. I think you said 91. So I'm sure those last 10 spots are on your bucket list. But what else? What else would there be for you to see while you're over here or wherever?
Sure, yeah. I think in Europe, there's people that have done, I think it's the 42, but I might have made that up. But in terms of UEFA countries in Europe, so that are affiliated, so however many it is, 40, whatever. So that would be one in every country in Europe. It's not anywhere near on my radar. I think I've done 13. So, and I've done all the close ones. Who knows what international travel is going to look like in the next, 4 or 5 years. We've recently had cheap flights anywhere. I can get to Cologne in Germany for a cheaper price than to get to Manchester in England. We've benefited from these crazy cheap flights. If that continues, then no reason why I can't get to a few more. But yeah, maybe one in every stadium in Europe would be good for stadium journey in Europe.
Now, on the average, how many stadiums, how many football grounds do you get to per year? Like before the coronavirus, what was your count this year?
Yeah, I think I sort of count. I don't count as religiously as some, but I think I might have been on to about the 70, 75, 80 matches that I saw. Not new stadiums, because I can't.
Okay.
It's hard to get to new stadiums now because I have to drive further and further away to get to a new one. But in terms of fixtures, matches, and that's because I love my local non-league matches. So I can drive within 10 miles. There's probably 5, 6, 7 teams that I can see. So, and I don't really mind about the whole standard. So you pay £5 to get in, get a program, cup of tea and a Mars bar at half time, and still be back by sort of 9:30. That inflates my figures probably.
Yeah, because I believe you reviewed Southampton this year, correct?
Yeah, I did a little updated one of that. Yeah, that's right.
Because I had to update that on the list, which is good. But so what other stadiums are you near? I assume these are EFL, Football League Championship, League One, League Two.
Yeah, so the ones I was talking, my closest ones are even lower than that. So these are part-time footballers, and they play in these small grounds. So in terms of the bigger clubs that are local in the Premier League, our closest is Bournemouth currently, and the other way is Brighton. Brighton and Hove Albion, and then London is only about 70 miles from here, so we've got it's about an hour and 10 minutes on the train to London. So all of those London stadiums that we've talked about are there as well. So in terms of the top flight, that's the sort of distances.
Now, how are some of these lower facilities that you go to? I assume they're very basic, but how would you describe that atmosphere?
Yeah, I'm a real lover of non-league football.
Okay.
I think it's, we talked about the money earlier, sort of spoiling the Premier League and the whole competition really. So in non-league football, you've got a far more level playing field, and you've got volunteers and supporters who are, often been there for years and years and years. Not being paid, but they're there because they love the game. You're made to feel welcome. You're there as a fan, and you're counted. When I go to a Premier League game, they call you a customer these days, which means they don't care about you at all, but they feel they've got to use that lingo. You go to a non-league ground, you know, the gate man will talk to you, the program seller will talk to you, the lady on the bar will talk to you. So it becomes a really positive experience watching non-league. And so typically they will be railed off, so they will have a fence around the outside, and the higher up the non-league sort of pyramid that you go, they have to have a certain amount of seats. So some leagues you have to have 150 seats, some leagues you have to have 500 seats. So typically, as clubs rise, they have to add stands to their existing facilities. But of course, there's not much money washing around in non-league football, so it's often again where you find these old, quite decrepit-looking stadiums. But yes, sort of good people.
Yeah, that's kind of like how some minor league ballparks are around here. You know, people talk to you. You're up close and personal with the players. You know, fans know each other. You know, you sit in the same seat or you hang out by the concession area. So I can see that be very parallel to what we look for here with lower level baseball and some of the lower level soccer clubs here. I mean, there's some fourth division soccer leagues that don't play in the best stadiums, but you feel like you're part of the team. You feel like you're not just a customer, but you mean something to the guys playing on the field for nothing. You know, they're not making a lot of money, and some of them are trying to make it up the level. Some of them are just playing for fun. Yeah. And I think a lot of when we talk about soccer here in the States or in Canada, everybody tries to emulate what goes on in Europe, you know, whether it's England or France. You know, one time we didn't have the advertisements on our jerseys. Now we do. One time all our teams had a specific nickname. Now we have FC, we have United as our names. And now we're trying to get that lower level soccer to be the same. And one big push out here in the United States is relegation and delegation, promotion and relegation. Which
not going to happen.
It probably won't happen, but who knows? We've copied everything else. Are you a fan of that, or would you rather have like a championship?
Yes, I mean, if you ask I was going to say if you ask an English person, but you are asking an English person. Yes. So here's an English person's response: you've got to have promotion and relegation. How can you have a sport that doesn't? It just doesn't make sense. Promotion and relegation. It's competition, isn't it? It's all about surely sport is competition, and without it, we were talking about how in England we've got the top six, and with the money they're getting, it perpetuates and they stay in the top six. Well, you know, the next dream in the Premier League for those ones would be, you know, keep it closed, make sure we always get into the Champions League so we get the money. That's the antithesis of sport as far as we're concerned. It would be great to see, I'll pick a team, I'll say Man United, to get relegated, just because why couldn't they be? It would be quite, would be nice. I'm sure you'll agree, it would be quite funny. And for a small team to make it all the way up to the Premier League, it's happened in the past, still happens, but if you were to have a closed shop, there's lots of reasons why it doesn't fit with how we understand sport to be. But hey, that's why we have our differences.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of people that are pushing that down here. I don't know if the money's big enough for that to happen at this point, and I think that's the big drawback. But it's great to see a team that, you know, is playing in the lower level work its way up and find themselves in the Premier League championship.
Yeah, the American dream. The American dream surely is all about, you know, you know, someone coming from nowhere becoming the president or whatever. So how that can't happen in your sport seems a bit crazy.
And it you know, there's a new soccer league here. It's called the National Independent Soccer Association, and that's kind of what they're trying to model things out of. But it's going to be hard because, you know, not every city wants a soccer team. You know, they're okay having a regional soccer team, but then you take in travel and all that. It's going to tie up a lot of money.
Sure.
But, you know, right now Cincinnati 15 years ago couldn't attract flies to their professional soccer club. Now they're in the MLS. They got a new stadium. They're getting 30,000 people to games. It's just unheard of, but there was a lot of money that they had to invest, millions of dollars in order to get there. I love the concept they have over in Europe where you win and you get to move up. You win again, you get to move up. It's beautiful.
I can see how, because that's the way it's always been for us.
Exactly.
But I can see where money's involved. As soon as you've got the system you've got, to backtrack from that is obviously. I mean, it'd be great if someone made that brave decision, but I can see that to backtrack from where you are is harder than for us, where it's just always been the case.
Yeah.
Now, did you not say that to go into the Premier League, that your stadium has to be a certain level? It has to be have so many seats?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that going on all the way up through from non-league. So, and you're right to make the point that maybe that's a bit of a contradiction, I guess, because at non-league level, it kind of makes sense if you haven't got facilities, ladies' toilets or something, and then you move up into a high division. You should have the basic facilities, for lots of fans to come along. But yeah, I agree with you that putting restrictions on isn't ideal. We haven't really faced the problem yet, though, because you could say, well, okay, tell me when a team wasn't promoted because their facilities weren't good enough, and that hasn't really happened, because as they're going up, they're investing in their stadium as they go along, and so by the time you get to the top of the championship, your stadium is ready. So we've got a team called Bournemouth in the Premier League. Their stadium holds 12,000, which is tiny. But they just about had enough of what they needed to get up.
Isn't that the real American dream, to make people think they can go all the way to the top, but really they can't?
You tell me, mate. You tell me.
I don't know. My American friends there would have to answer that one for you. Well, I think we've got it well covered. Unless you have anything else that you want to add, Mark?
Just want to say, go Man City.
Shut up.
No, I'm going to be honest with you. I do not have a favorite MLS team. I cannot get behind one. I tried. I liked the Metro Stars when they were created in 1996. Then they changed their name to New York Red Bulls. They don't play in New York. I'm not rooting for an energy drink team. So Man City sort of became that team I rooted for. I also root for the New York Cosmos, who play in the third division out here, and whose ownership, Rocco Camiso, has hopes of one day having promotion or relegation here. But he's going to be throwing away a lot of money, because I just think the cards are stacked against him at this point. Maybe 50 years from now, but
not going to happen.
I probably won't be alive. It probably won't happen, because if you're an owner and you put in $200 million to join a club that includes a stadium and salary, you don't want to be relegated to play in the USL Championship. So that's probably why that's not going to happen for some time. But I was really excited about talking to you today, Chris, because I love to reach out and talk about football teams out in England, and
the rest of us are soccer idiots. So
soccer idiots. Well, I don't think I'm the biggest soccer fan, but I'm definitely curious. I would
maybe on this podcast you are.
I would definitely like to go to Fulham. You're right. Go see the Cottage, and I don't know if I want to go to Millwall though and wear an away jersey. I might get my butt kicked. But what a great story that would be.
We'd have to do something just on that. But yeah, from a European side of things, it's as we look at Stadium Journey in the States and see all the different sports represented and so many of you doing that, it's great. We're just trying to get a bit of a foothold here in Europe. Got a new correspondent in Ukraine, so going to see some stuff from him soon, and we're just hoping to build, because there is such a rich tradition of stadiums and of culture within the sport, that we'd love to convey that through word and through podcasts and stuff. And a few of us at the moment, but hoping to make a bit more of a splash, and also get more people over here interested in some of the stuff that you guys are talking about. And if you think you're not talking very well about soccer, you try and interview me about ice hockey or something, and that'll be ignorance.
So any of our listeners out there who are interested in any of the places that Chris has talked about, there is a a ton of spots on the website, so make sure and check those out. So I do want to say thanks to Chris for joining us on this afternoon from England. Chris, do you want to take a minute and let our listeners know where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, certainly. So we're big on Twitter over here. So if you go to Stadium J Europe, that's all one word, Stadium J Europe, you'll see all of our reviews. You'll see some great pictures. We only started it recently, so we've only got a small following there. But yeah, if you want to start following that, you'll see some of our adventures. I run a couple of other ones myself, but the links are on that site. So if you go to the Stadium J Europe Twitter site, you'll find all the details there.